What if I told you there are people who walk through life without fear of falling, because they've already learned how to rise up stronger than before? While you're fighting external storms, they become unbreakable from within. Because it's not about avoiding pain, it's about building a soul that doesn't shatter because of it. So how long are you going to let the world hold the power to break you? In this video, you're going to discover how to build that invisible strength that lets you face any blow life throws at you without losing your center. We're not talking about becoming numb or pretending nothing gets to you, but about learning to master your inner world so nothing outside has the power to destroy you. Stoic philosophy is brutally real, a tool made for chaos, loss, and crisis. I'm going to show you how to transform yourself from the inside out, how to turn every wound into another layer of resistance. Because when you learn to hold yourself up in the middle of collapse, you're no longer fragile. You're fire, you're steel, you're you, whole. Now I want you to pause for a moment. How many times have you felt like everything was crashing down on you, and yet you kept pretending you were fine? Like you had to keep going, even when you were falling apart inside. If that's ever happened to you, this channel is your refuge. Subscribe and become an exclusive member to learn how to hold yourself up, even when the world won't do it for you. And write it in the comments. Today, I start being my own strength. Ready to find out what you're really made of? Then let's begin. Before we talk about strength, you need to know someone who embodied it, without saying a single word. They say Cleanthes would show up to the academy covered in dust, with wounded hands and an aching back. By day, he studied philosophy with Zeno, the founder of Stoicism. By night, he worked drawing water from a well just to survive. While many chased fame and recognition, he wanted something harder, to learn how to be at peace with himself. One afternoon, a younger student watched him with a look of sympathy and asked, "How can you keep coming here after so many hours of work?" Cleanthes looked at him calmly and answered, "Because what tires the body strengthens the soul, if you know why you're doing it." That wasn't a poetic phrase, it was simply how he lived. While others talked about virtue, he practiced it in silence. He slept little, ate little, but carried a calm that disarmed everyone. Each bucket of water he pulled from the well was a reminder that self-mastery is trained just like the muscles in your body. With effort, with repetition, with purpose. Some mocked him, calling him the philosopher of the well. But Cleanthes never responded with pride or anger. He just kept working, trusting that real strength isn't something you show off, it's something you carry. And over time, without chasing it, he became Zeno's successor. Not because he was the most brilliant, but because no one had mastered themselves the way he had. Centuries later, Epictetus would remember his example, saying, "If someone endures hardship for something noble, how could he be considered unfortunate?" Cleanthes understood something most people forget. True greatness doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from moving forward without losing your calm. That was his lesson. Strength isn't something you shout about. It's something you build day by day in silence when no one's watching. Because in the end, it's not about how much weight you carry, but how you carry it. And there, in the way you hold yourself when the world feels too heavy, lies the root of all inner strength, invisible consistency. And with that truth, our journey begins. The first lesson, your hardest battle is within. First lesson, your hardest battle is within. Picture this. Outside, hail is falling, the wind is slamming against the windows, and it feels like everything's about to break. Inside, in silence, someone sits down, takes a breath, and keeps writing. Not because they don't feel the cold, but because they've learned not to let the outside world dictate what happens inside. That's the difference between fragility and inner strength. It's not about avoiding the storm, it's about staying the course right through it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote a phrase that should be engraved in the mind of anyone seeking strength. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. That's not poetry, it's precision. If your thoughts are tinted with fear, every challenge will look massive. But if they're tinted with calm, the world can shake and you'll still be standing. Think about this. Your mind is like a piano before a concert. If you don't tune it, any external noise will throw it off. But if you tune it every morning, even a hard hit might echo, but it won't break the harmony. That's the invisible art of inner strength. It's not about building walls. It's about adjusting strings. The Stoics knew that the mind needs daily training, just like a musician tunes their instrument. No, reading an inspiring quote isn't enough. You have to practice it, repeat it, live it. That's why I want to offer you something simple, a tinting ritual. Each morning before you check your phone, choose a guiding phrase, something like, "Today I respond, I don't react." Dying your first thought of the day is like playing the first right note. Now picture this. You're at the downtown bakery where you work, and the oven breaks right before opening. There's an order of croissants for a hotel, the clock is ticking, and your students are looking at you like, now what? If your mind isn't tuned, that moment becomes chaos. Everything's going wrong, this day is doomed. But if you're in tune, the story shifts. You take a breath, assess the situation, call maintenance, divide the team and use the auxiliary ovens. The situation didn't change. You did. Epictetus summed it up in a lesson that feels written for us. It's not things that disturb us, but the judgments we make about them. And that judgment, that internal dialogue, is your first battlefield. The rest of the world just responds to whatever story you decide to tell yourself. And when something goes wrong, practice renaming it. Instead of saying problem, say training material. It's not just a nice phrase. It triggers a chemical shift in your brain. The word changes the emotion. The emotion changes your action. And right there, where others get frustrated, you grow. Before a meeting, a class, or any stressful situation, take a moment. Breathe slowly and ask yourself, what story am I going to tell myself about this? And make sure your answer includes a verb of action. I'm going to organize. I'm going to learn. I'm going to hold steady. No, it's not self-help, it's direction. Because a mind without direction is like a piano played by the wind. It makes noise, but it doesn't say anything. Shane Parrish, from the Knowledge Project, explains this through science. Good decisions start with deciding what to ignore, and there's nothing more stoic than that. The modern world throws 1,000 distractions at you every day, but inner strength begins the moment you choose what's allowed into your mind and what's not. Every distraction you reject is another brick in your calm. My friend, what you're building isn't numbness, it's mastery. It's not about not feeling, it's about not letting the external rule your internal. That's the difference between chaos and serenity, between reacting and responding. Inner strength doesn't show up when things are easy. It reveals itself when the oven breaks down, when plans fall apart, when the noise outside tries to paint your soul gray. Go back to Marcus Aurelius, but this time with a practical gesture. Write down "color of my thoughts" on a small card and keep it by your laptop, on your desk, or in your backpack. It's not decoration. It's the key to your piano. Because when the day starts going out of tune, just seeing it will remind you that you get to choose the color. And if you choose it consciously, you've already won the first battle before the day even begins. Because the one who masters their mind, my friend, has already built a fortress that nothing and no one can tear down. Lesson 2. Learn to master what you feel. Do you think a true Stoic wakes up without emotions? No, my friend. They wake up facing the same waves you do. The difference is, they've learned how to surf them. Marcus Aurelius left behind a phrase that's like a lighthouse in the middle of chaos. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. It's not a command, it's an invitation. A way to remind you that you can still move the rudder even when the sea is throwing you around. Picture this scene. In a hairdressing classroom, a student is about to take her final exam. She's spent weeks practicing the perfect color. But just as she prepares the mix, something goes wrong. The dye oxidizes too early, the shade changes, and within seconds, what looked like a sure result falls apart. She freezes, tears fill her eyes, and the silence feels heavier than the mistake. In that moment, the teacher has two paths. If frustration takes control, he reacts, raises his voice, throws out chaotic instructions, and the classroom turns into a mess. But if he masters what he feels, he breathes, lowers his tone, and turns the disaster into a real lesson. He explains the chemical reaction, adjusts the timing, and finds an alternative. Same mistake, different energy. Same fire, but a different kind of fire. That's what someone does when they've learned to respond instead of react. They don't repress the emotion, they channel it. Calmness, contrary to what many think, is not the absence of emotion. It's emotion in order. It's the difference between shouting and guiding, between putting out a fire with gasoline or with water. If Epictetus watched you at a cafe when they handed you the wrong coffee, he wouldn't ask, "Why did they do this to you?" He'd ask, "Who's in charge here, you or your impulse?" That question alone is enough to change the way your hand moves, because what throws you off balance isn't someone else's mistake. It's how you interpret it. Practicing that kind of control is like training a muscle. Every day gives you a chance. A badly worded phrase, a delay at work, a glance that makes you uncomfortable. All of it is training material. You can waste your energy reacting, or you can use it to strengthen your self-control. Here's a simple technique to start. The 3-gate pause. Before you respond, go through the first gate, the body. Exhale slowly, drop your shoulders, let your blood flow. Then, the second gate, language. Turn what you were going to say into a question. Instead of, "Why did you do this?" say, "How can we fix this?" Shift from confrontation to direction. And finally, the third gate, action. Choose the smallest possible step that improves the situation. You don't need to solve everything. Just make one precise move. Another useful tool is creating an anchor. Whenever you feel a surge of emotion, touch your thumb to your index finger and repeat the word precision in your mind. It's not magic. It's a physical reminder that you have a choice. Over time, your body starts to associate that gesture with calm, as if it remembers it can return to center without needing to run from the feeling. Andrew Kirby, a creator focused on mental development, talks about dopamine detox, a practice to stop reacting to every single stimulus. It's not about living flatlined, but about turning calm into focused power. The same idea Stoics called inner strength, the ability to stay centered when everything around you is trying to knock you off course. Farnham Street calls it creating space between stimulus and response. That space is your freedom, and every time you choose to use it, you strengthen your emotional independence. And that's what I recommend to you. At the end of each day, take 10 seconds to write one single line. Today, the dominant emotion was, and the way I channeled it was, nothing more. It's not a sentimental journal, it's a quick mirror. Over time, you'll start to notice patterns, progress, and quiet wins that show you the impulse no longer controls you. You control it. Mastering your emotions doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you feel with intelligence, because when the impulse takes over, it drains you. But when you choose how to respond, you fill yourself with direction. That's the difference between being dragged by the waves or learning how to ride them. Epictetus left a phrase that could serve as a daily reminder. Some things are up to us and some are not. The raw emotion, that's not up to you. It shows up on its own. But your response, that's fully yours. And that, my friend, is where real power begins. Because the one who learns to govern what they feel can withstand any blow without breaking. And that's the mark of a strength so solid. No criticism, no loss, no failure can tear it down. Lesson 3. Stop trying to control what's not up to you. Picture a man standing at the edge of the sea, trying to push the waves back with his hands. You watch him wear himself out, shouting, fighting something he has no chance of stopping. The more effort he makes, the more he sinks. The harder he struggles, the more salt stings his eyes. That man isn't crazy. He's all of us. Every time we think the world should behave the way we want it to. We try to force reality to fit our plans. And when it doesn't, we get frustrated, exhausted, and end up drowning in our own resistance. Epictetus was the exact opposite of that man. He lived through storms he never chose, but he never tried to push the waves. Born a slave, with barely any control over his fate, he still managed to find a kind of freedom within that no one could take from him. One day, his master, overwhelmed by rage, twisted his leg violently. Epictetus, without screaming, calmly said, "If you keep going, you'll break it." And when it finally broke, he simply added, "I told you." There was no pride in his voice, no anger, just acceptance. He couldn't control the act, but he could control his response. He couldn't avoid the pain, but he could decide what it meant. That moment says everything about him. Epictetus didn't collapse. He held steady. Not because he was immune to suffering, but because he understood that what happens outside can't destroy you if you're calm on the inside. He knew how to tell the difference between what's within your power and what isn't. And in that space, he found a strength that neither slavery, nor pain, nor loss could break. From then on, he understood that freedom doesn't depend on what happens. It depends on how you interpret it. The outside world can hurt you, but it can't govern you without your permission. That inner mastery is what allows you to build a kind of strength that doesn't crumble under loss, criticism, or failure. Think about it. How many times have you felt disappointed because someone didn't act the way you expected? Or frustrated because something didn't go according to plan? Every one of those moments was you trying to push the waves. You wanted life to follow your script, and when it didn't, you resisted. But reality doesn't change because you want it to, and that's where much of our suffering begins. Not because of what happens, but because we wanted something else to happen. Epictetus taught that in every situation, there are only two zones: what you can control and what you can't. Your mind belongs to the first. Everything else doesn't. That's why when something slips out of your hands, don't see it as defeat. See it as a signal that you've reached the edge of your control, and that beyond that point, it's up to the universe. Accepting that doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. And now, you get to practice it yourself. Let's do the circle of influence exercise. Imagine two circles, one inside the other. In the small one are your thoughts, your choices, your tone, your effort. In the larger one are other people's reactions, the weather, the results. Anytime you feel frustrated, ask yourself, which circle am I investing my energy in? If it's the big one, you're fighting the sea. If it's the small one, you're rowing forward. Also, learn to let go out loud. When something gets out of your control, say it. This is not in my hands. Not as an excuse, but as a release. It's a reminder that you can let go without giving up. Because what doesn't depend on you doesn't deserve your suffering. People often confuse acceptance with passivity, but they're opposites. Acceptance isn't about giving up. It's about taking full control of what you actually can influence and stopping the waste of energy on what you can't. It's a form of active wisdom, calm in motion. Think of the Stoics as sailors. They didn't seek calm waters. They learned to adjust the sails. They knew they couldn't control the wind, but they could control their direction. That's why their strength didn't come from what was happening around them. It came from the clarity with which they distinguished between what they could and couldn't change. Epictetus left behind a phrase you should keep close every day. Some things are up to us, and some are not. If you understand this, you will never be forced or hindered. That's the essence of inner freedom, knowing when to act and when to let go. My friend, stop pushing waves. Don't waste your energy trying to fix the wind. Adjust your sails and let the sea take you where you need to go. Life is a river. You're not meant to stop it. Learn to row with its current. And now I want you to do more than just reflect. Join those who are building this invisible fortress right alongside you. Tell me in the comments, what's something you've been trying to control that you need to let go of to get your calm back? Or simply write this as a symbol of that step and of being part of this community. Today, I choose to adjust my sails and keep moving forward with serenity. Secret 4. Turn pain into your greatest teacher. Imagine a blacksmith in the middle of his workshop. Fire lights up his face and the hammer's rhythm echoes through the air. Each strike seems brutal, but it doesn't destroy, it shapes. The glowing metal bends, resists, sparks, until it finally becomes a sword. Without fire and without the hammer, it would remain nothing more than a purposeless bar. Life strikes us in the same way. Every difficulty, every loss, every wound doesn't come to break us, but to forge us. Seneca was like that blacksmith. In one of his letters, he wrote, "Fire tests gold, and adversity tests the brave." He said this after losing nearly everything, his wealth, his status, his reputation. And even then, he kept writing, teaching, reflecting. Not from a place of privilege, but from collapse. He didn't complain about the fire around him. He used it to find out what he was truly made of. Because when you can no longer control what's happening to you, you can still choose what kind of person you'll be in the midst of it. And that choice changed everything. And yet, we forget that. We want to grow without fire, to advance without falling, to learn without pain. But inner strength, the kind that keeps you steady through criticism, loss, or failure, can only be built through contact with what hurts. Without that heat, the soul stays soft. Think of a real situation. You've invested years into something, a relationship, a project, a dream. You've poured your energy, your hopes, your sleepless nights into it. And suddenly, it all falls apart. The emptiness it leaves behind feels so big it seems like all of it was for nothing. But if you apply the Stoic perspective, that emptiness transforms. It stops being ruins and becomes space. Space to rebuild yourself, more aware, more calm, with a kind of strength you don't get from reading nice quotes, but from walking through the storm and coming out the other side. That's the essence of transformative pain. Understanding that what burns you today strengthens you tomorrow. That scars aren't signs of defeat, they're proof of endurance. Let me suggest something that might sound strange, but it works. Write a letter to your pain, not from a place of complaint or self-pity, but from gratitude. Tell it, "Thank you for showing me what I needed to see. Thank you for teaching me what had to change." Turning pain into words is one of the most direct ways to turn it into learning. And right here, Marcus Aurelius seems to answer you from another century, with a phrase that perfectly bridges what you feel and what you choose to do. What stands in the way becomes the way. It's not just a beautiful line, it's a life instruction. If something hurts today, it's because there's a lesson waiting behind it. Every obstacle, every disappointment, every fall is part of the map that leads you to your strength. Don't curse the stone in your path. Use it to climb higher. Then change the verb. Don't say "I broke." Say "I'm rebuilding." It might sound like a small shift, but it isn't. The first verb leaves you in ruins. The second puts you in motion. And once you're moving, you're already healing. At the end of the day, try keeping a journal of lessons. Don't write down what went wrong. Write down what the day taught you. A thought, a phrase, a reaction that helped you grow. Over time, you'll realize the hardest days were also the ones that helped you understand who you really are. Psychologist Edith Eger, a survivor of Auschwitz, wrote a line that feels like a modern echo of Seneca. "Suffering is inevitable, but misery is optional." You can't avoid what happens, but you can choose how to respond. And in that choice lies the inner freedom that nothing outside can take from you. The Stoics didn't seek pain, but they didn't run from it either. They knew the strongest roots grow underground in the dark. That fire doesn't destroy what's solid, it reveals its shape. So when life puts you face to face with hardship again, don't see it as punishment. You're being refined, not broken. You're being shaped, not punished. My friend, pain is not your enemy. It's the chisel revealing what's already inside you. And if you face it with courage, you'll become someone no loss will ever be able to shatter. Fifth lesson, stop living to please others. If the Stoics lived today, they wouldn't check the likes on their posts. They'd reflect on their integrity at the end of the day. They wouldn't care whether the world applauded their actions, only whether those actions stayed true to what they believed. Because real freedom for them never depended on what others thought. It came from the inner peace that comes from acting with integrity. We live surrounded by filters, rehearsed smiles, and the constant pressure to appear a certain way. Everything is designed to impress, not to be real. But tell me, how much does that mask cost you? How much energy drains from trying not to disappoint anyone? In trying to please everyone, we end up becoming invisible to ourselves. Diogenes of Sinope understood this centuries before social media or appearances existed. They say he lived in a barrel, with a lamp lit even in broad daylight. When asked what he was looking for, he replied, "I'm looking for an honest man." His entire life was a challenge to the desire to please. One day, Alexander the Great came to visit him, fascinated by his reputation. He found him sunbathing and asked if he could grant him a wish. Diogenes, without getting up, replied, "Yes, move aside, you're blocking the sun." In front of the most powerful man in the world, he didn't bow or fake humility. His answer was a declaration, "I don't need your approval to be at peace." And that is the essence of this lesson. When you stop living to please, you become someone no one can control. Today, the chains aren't visible, but they're just as heavy. They show up in the fear of letting people down, in the, "What will they think if I say this?" in the forced smile during a moment you don't agree with. Every time you adjust your choices just to avoid discomfort, you lose a piece of your authenticity. No, this isn't about being rebellious for the sake of it. It's about reclaiming something much more valuable, your voice. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Peace comes when you stop caring about what others think or say about you." And that phrase, if you really understand it, is a key. Because inner strength is impossible if you depend on applause. A mind that seeks approval lives in a cage, even if the doors are wide open. Picture a normal day. You say yes to a plan you don't want. Smile through a conversation you're not invested in. Stay silent on an idea you believe in. By the end of the day, you feel exhausted and don't even know why. That's the weight of incoherence, an invisible fatigue from acting against yourself. The Stoics spoke of the inner echo, the voice that speaks when you do the right thing, even if no one notices. That's the only validation that really matters. You can start practicing it with something simple. Before making a decision, ask yourself whether you're doing it by choice or out of fear of letting someone down. That question, if asked honestly, cuts the root of the habit to please. Here's a challenge for you. Practice what I call validation silence. Can you imagine it? A full day without justifying yourself, without explaining your choices, without asking for permission to exist. It's not arrogance, it's mental hygiene. You learn to be with yourself, to trust your own judgment without needing a choir to confirm it. And here's the irony. When you stop chasing approval, people respect you more. Authenticity creates silence where there used to be noise. And if you ever feel tempted to seek the world's approval, remember what Diogenes did. He looked at the powerful without fear. He didn't need wealth or status, just the certainty of his freedom. His example may seem extreme, but the message is simple. When you belong to yourself, you already have everything. Seneca said it clearly too. No one can be happy if they depend on what others think of them. And he knew it well. He went from imperial advisor to political enemy, and in both roles he held to the same principle. Act according to reason, not the crowd. That kind of inner stability, the ability to remain the same in both praise and rejection, is the real definition of strength. Think about it. We live surrounded by mirrors, social media, comments, other people's opinions. But the problem isn't the mirrors. It's forgetting that none of them reflect who you really are. So when doubt creeps in and you wonder if you're doing the right thing, don't look for approval out there. Ask yourself if you can look in the mirror and feel at peace. My friend, you don't need everyone to understand you. You need to understand yourself. You don't need applause. You need to walk with a clear conscience, because applause fades, but coherence doesn't. So let them talk. Let them criticize. Let them have their opinions. People will always have something to say. Your job is not to convince them. It's to stay true to what you know is right. And when you do, you'll feel something no external validation can ever give you. A kind of freedom so deep that nothing and no one can shake it. Because the day you stop living to please others is the day you finally start living in peace. Sixth lesson: discipline is what keeps you standing. Picture a runner in the early morning. There's no music, no crowd, no visible finish line, just the sound of his steps hitting the wet pavement. Every stride is a promise he keeps without witnesses, without applause. The rain soaks his clothes, the cold bites at his skin, but he keeps going. Not because he feels motivated. Motivation left miles ago. He keeps going because of discipline, that quiet force that doesn't rely on emotion, only on decision. That image, my friend, is what a modern Stoic looks like. Someone who keeps moving forward even when their body is begging them to stop. Epictetus would have understood that runner perfectly. He started life as a slave, with almost no control over anything. But there was one thing he could master: his response to the inevitable. He said, "No man is free unless he masters himself." And for him, discipline wasn't an ideal, it was survival. Every day he had to choose between giving in or keeping his mind steady. That repeated constant choice is what made him unshakable. My friend, discipline isn't forged on big days. It's born in the ordinary, the invisible, in moments that seem to mean nothing. Think about it. The alarm goes off and your mind whispers, 5 more minutes. It doesn't seem like much, but that tiny deal you make with laziness has a cost. It's the first invisible brick you use to either build or dismantle your inner fortress. Because every time you follow through on your word, you strengthen it. And every time you break it, you weaken it. Discipline begins in silence, in the decision to get up even when no one's watching, in choosing the book instead of the phone, water instead of excess, focus instead of distraction. These tiny gestures put together build an inner wall. And when that wall is solid, not even criticism, loss, or failure can knock you down. Seneca summed it up with brutal clarity. Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. There's no perfect moment, no obstacle-free day. What exists is daily preparation, the kind that lets you seize the moment when it comes. People call luck what disciplined people build in silence. And you can build the same discipline the Stoics had. Choose actions so small you can't fail at them, and do them every time. It's not about running a marathon. It's about putting on your shoes every morning. It's not about writing a book. It's about writing one line each day. Small promises kept. Micro wins that rewire your brain to trust yourself again. And to make sure you don't miss a day, create what I call the consistency calendar. Don't use it to track productivity. Use it to track reliability. Every day you follow through on your word, mark it. At the end of the month, you won't see numbers. You'll see a story. The story of someone who didn't let themselves down. That's the real reward. Not the results, but the pride of knowing you did what you said you would. And here's something the Stoics would deeply understand. Discipline doesn't depend on willpower. It depends on the environment you create, so you don't have to rely on willpower. If you want to act with strength, design your life so doing the right thing is the easy thing. Pack your gym bag the night before. Leave your book on the breakfast table. Cut out the distractions. A modern Stoic doesn't wait to feel inspired. They prepare so they don't have to decide 100 times a day. James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, puts it in a way that sounds like it was written for Stoics. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems, and that captures the heart of this lesson. You are not your intentions. You are your habits. What you do every day is who you are when everything starts to fall apart. Discipline is the backbone of your inner strength. No one sees it, but without it, you couldn't stand. It's what holds you up when enthusiasm disappears, when the world stays silent, when doubt whispers, just quit. If you lose it, everything crumbles. If you build it, everything finds its place. So today, before we wrap up this video, I want to leave you with one question. What small promise to yourself will you keep tomorrow, even if no one sees it? Write it in the comments. And if you feel it, share your Stoic declaration. Today, I'm not waiting for motivation, I stand by discipline. Seventh lesson, let go of what no longer serves you. Picture yourself walking down an empty road. dragging a massive suitcase behind you. Every step sounds the same: heavy, repetitive, exhausting. Inside, you're carrying broken objects, old letters, clothes that no longer fit. But the saddest part? That suitcase holds no future. No matter how far you go, as long as you keep dragging that weight, you won't get very far. We all do this. We hold on to memories, guilt, or bonds that no longer make sense, just because we once loved them. We convince ourselves that letting go means losing, when in fact, it's the only way we can truly move forward. Marcus Aurelius said, "He who fears losing what he loves is already its prisoner." And he was right. What binds you isn't the weight itself, it's your refusal to release it. Anything you cling to without purpose, a relationship, a habit, an old version of yourself, becomes an invisible chain. You can't see it, but it slows your every step. Life, my friend, is like a tree. It doesn't bloom because it holds on to every branch. It blooms because every winter, it lets go of what no longer serves. Pruning isn't destruction, it's space. Dry branches served their purpose, but if they're not cut away, they block the light. It's the same with you. You can't be filled with peace while you're still holding on to things that no longer align with who you are now. Imagine you still have the chat history from a relationship that ended 2 years ago. You don't read it, but you don't delete it either. You keep it just in case. And every time you see their name, something inside you hesitates. You may not realize it, but that digital file takes up space in your emotional memory. Until one day, you've had enough. You delete it. No ritual, no big announcement. You just do it. And something shifts. The world looks the same, but you feel lighter. Because that click wasn't just digital, it was an act of liberation. Adopt Seneca's mindset. Learn to live light. He said, "The things we own end up owning us." And he wasn't just talking about possessions. He meant anything you cling to without need. If you want to feel free, you have to start letting go on the inside too. Seneca practiced a small detachment exercise every day. He would imagine losing what he had, to remind himself that nothing external ever fully belonged to him. Do the same. Think for a moment about something that's hard for you to let go of. A relationship, a goal, a memory, and look at it from a distance. Ask yourself, do I need this, or am I just afraid to lose it? That single question opens space. Because when you learn to let go, you're not left with nothing. You're left with yourself. There's a simple practice that can help. The invisible inventory. Once a month, take a sheet of paper and write down everything that took up too much space in your mind. Not material things, thoughts, a conversation you keep replaying, a guilt that lingers, a worry you can't fix. Then mark the things you can't change or repair, and next to them write, "I release this." Do it slowly, like someone cleaning glass. Writing it down transforms what once felt eternal into something you can finally leave behind. You can also try what I call the silent goodbye. Not all endings need to be public or dramatic. Sometimes it's enough to close your eyes, take a breath, and say, "Thank you. That was enough." It's a way to end chapters with no resentment, no noise. When you learn to be grateful for what was, you make space for what's coming. And if symbols help you, make it physical. Move some furniture, donate clothes, get rid of items that no longer represent you. Every external change reinforces an internal shift. It's not magic, it's alignment. Your environment mirrors your mind, and when you bring order to it, something inside also begins to settle. Entrepreneur Mimi Econ calls this emotional decluttering, not just cleaning your closet, but your mind. She says many people feel stuck, not because they lack time, but because they lack space. Mental space, emotional space, room to breathe. And this ties directly to Stoic philosophy. You cannot be strong if you're surrounded by noise. Clarity is born from space. Sometimes letting go isn't about getting rid of something bad, but something that already served its purpose. The hard part isn't dropping it, it's accepting that it no longer leads you anywhere. But that acceptance is the start of all inner strength. Because when you learn to release what you cannot control, life stops pushing against you and starts moving with you. The Stoics understood that nature is always changing, and that resisting change is fighting life itself. And they were right. Nothing strong grows out of attachment. What stays flexible survives, what clings breaks. Now imagine letting go of that suitcase you were dragging. You watch it roll down a hill and disappear into the distance. And for the first time, you hear your own footsteps, without the sound of dragging. There's a new silence, not emptiness, peace. That's what inner freedom sounds like. Light, quiet, and completely yours. My friend, letting go is not losing. It's reclaiming the space where your strength is reborn. Because true stability doesn't come from holding on. It comes from knowing when to release. And when you learn to let go without fear, you'll discover something powerful. That nothing external, no criticism, no loss, no failure will ever be able to bring you down again. Because the one who knows how to let go is already free. 8th lesson, find a purpose that holds you up. They say Harriet Tubman, a woman enslaved in the 19th century, escaped the plantation where she lived, and instead of running away forever, she returned 13 times to free others. Every night she walked through forests terrified of being caught, guiding groups of people toward freedom. She said her purpose was to leave no one behind, because freedom means nothing if it's only mine. Her body trembled with fear, but her purpose was stronger than the fear. It's hard to imagine a clearer example of inner strength. When you know what you live for, not even the greatest danger can stop you. Centuries earlier, Marcus Aurelius was asking himself the same question, though from a very different place. In his palace, surrounded by power, he wrote quietly, "What was I born to do? To enjoy myself or to serve?" He wasn't looking for a mystical answer. He wanted a practical one. He understood that without a clear purpose, any obstacle becomes an excuse to give up. His purpose was to serve the common good, act with justice, and be an example, not an excuse. And that gave him a kind of strength no title or army could offer. When you have a purpose, chaos doesn't destroy you. It shapes you. But when you don't, even ordinary days feel like a burden. Imagine the alarm goes off and there's nothing that excites you. Work doesn't motivate you, plans feel far away, and every morning blends into the last. But the day you decide on a purpose, no matter how small, whether it's to teach, care, create, inspire, that alarm stops being torture. It doesn't drag you out of bed, it calls you. You no longer think, "I have to get up." You think, "I'm getting up because this matters." And that's where real inner strength begins. It's not about being made of steel. It's about having a reason strong enough to hold you steady when everything around you shakes. Friedrich Nietzsche put it perfectly. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Purpose doesn't eliminate pain. It gives it meaning. To find yours, don't wait for a revelation or a lightning bolt of clarity. Purpose isn't found. It's built. Start with what I call the purpose map. Every night ask yourself, what activity made me feel most alive today? Don't overthink it, just write it down. Do that for a month, then look for the pattern. You might discover you love helping others, creating things, listening, teaching, solving problems. Your purpose is usually hidden in those small things you do from the heart, even when no one asks you to. Then apply the service rule. If your purpose only includes you, it dies when you stumble. But if it includes others, it becomes more resilient. When your energy fades, knowing someone else benefits from what you do brings you back to your feet. That's why the Stoics insisted so much on acting for the common good, not just because it's moral, but because it gives you strength on the hard days. Marcus Aurelius practiced this every morning. Before starting his day, he would remind himself, "Today I will fulfill my role in the universe." Not because he thought he was indispensable, but because he understood that we all have a role to play. If he, as an emperor, could see it that way, imagine the power it would have if you did too. When you wake up, say quietly to yourself, "Today, I fulfill my role." Not as some grand declaration, but as a simple reminder that you're not here by accident. And if you ever get frustrated because you still don't know exactly what your purpose is, remember what Lewis Howes, creator of the School of Greatness, says: purpose isn't found by meditating, it's built by doing. You don't need perfect clarity to start. You need movement. Try things, make mistakes, adjust. Purpose reveals itself along the way, not in the waiting. The Stoics would say that purpose isn't measured by greatness but by alignment. You can be a teacher, a gardener, a doctor, a baker. What matters is doing it with intention. When your life is aligned with something bigger than your own comfort, every adversity becomes smaller. My friend, maybe you don't know your purpose yet, but I promise you, it's closer than you think. Don't look for it in what's impressive. Look for it in what's sincere. It's in what you do with love, what connects you to others, what leaves a mark without needing recognition. Because when you find something that transcends you, the noise of the world becomes irrelevant. You no longer need everything to go perfectly, because you know where you're headed. And then you discover a truth the Stoics understood centuries ago, that the greatest strength doesn't come from controlling your fate. It comes from having a purpose so clear that not even fate can pull you off course. Now it's your turn. Write "I find my purpose" in the comments if you're ready to stop living on autopilot and start building a life with direction. Let that phrase be your starting point. Ninth secret: surround yourself with what lifts you, not what drains you. Seneca once said, "If you consider someone a friend but don't trust them as much as you trust yourself, you're making a huge mistake." He wasn't just talking about friendship. He was talking about your environment, about how the people, ideas, and habits you surround yourself with ultimately shape who you are. Because the soul, like iron, corrodes from what touches it daily. Now picture this. It's nighttime in a huge city, cold lights all around. A young man walks with his headphones on. His playlist is full of sad songs. His group of friends only talks about problems, about how bad everything is, how impossible it is to change. Every time he tries to share something that excites him, they laugh or change the subject. At first, he doesn't even notice it, but little by little his mood drops. What's strange is that nothing terrible has actually happened. He's just been slowly contaminated. And that's the quietest trap of a toxic environment. It doesn't always break you. Sometimes it just slowly turns you off. We're constantly surrounded by voices, screens, and opinions that shape our mindset without us realizing it. And if you don't pay attention to what enters your mind, you end up believing those thoughts are your own. Seneca saw it coming. In one of his letters, he wrote, "If you consider someone a friend but don't trust them as much as you trust yourself, you're making a huge mistake." Because your environment isn't just background, it's a reflection of what you allow into your life. What you hear every day, the people you spend time with, the ideas you consume, all of it either strengthens or weakens you. Think about something familiar. You walk into the teacher's lounge or an office and hear the same invisible melody. Complaints about work, politics, the weather, life. At first you listen quietly, but 5 minutes in, you're complaining too. No one forced you. No one taught you. The brain simply absorbs what's around it. The mind is like a sponge. It soaks up what it sits in. Leave it too long in dirty water and it starts to smell the same. Here's where a deeply Stoic idea comes in. Inner strength isn't built by discipline alone. It also comes from selection. It's not enough to resist the noise. You have to consciously choose what feeds you. That's why I suggest a practice I call the mental diet. Just like you watch what you eat, start watching what you listen to. Try a negativity fast. 1 week with no gossip, no complaining, no content that drains you. Fill that space with books, music, or conversations that lift you up. You'll feel the shift. Not because life suddenly gets better, but because your mind clears, like opening a window in a stuffy room. Another powerful habit is the energy test. After talking to someone or consuming content, ask yourself a simple question: do I feel lighter or heavier? If a conversation leaves you drained, it's not a coincidence. Energy is just as contagious as ideas. Surround yourself with people who challenge you to think better, act better, be better. It's not elitism, it's self-respect. And this includes your digital environment too. The endless scroll is a trap. It makes you feel informed, but it's mostly noise and comparison. Replace noise with reference. Listen to people who've already walked the path you want to follow. Find voices that push you, not numb you. Instead of getting lost in the chaos of social media, choose a few people who inspire you and consume their ideas with intention, not distraction. Epictetus said, "There is no favorable wind for the sailor who doesn't know where he's going." But even if you do know your direction, the wind can still turn against you if you're sailing through other people's storms. Your environment is that sea. It can sink you, or it can carry you forward. And if you want to maintain your inner strength, you have to protect the waters you're sailing in. Entrepreneur and author Alex Hormozi often says something very stoic. Your environment doesn't change you overnight. It erodes you or lifts you little by little. And he's right, there's never one day where someone says, "Today you'll lose your energy." It just fades. Slowly. That's why the Stoics were careful about the company they kept. Not out of pride, but because they knew virtue needs space to breathe. If you surround yourself with people who complain, you'll start seeing life as a burden. But if you're around people who take action, you'll learn to see obstacles as opportunities. Seneca even advised spending time with the wise, even if only through their words. If you can't have someone inspiring beside you, read them, study them, carry their thinking with you. That's one of the most powerful ways to surround yourself well. It's not about quantity, it's about quality. My friend, if you've been feeling dimmed lately, stop and look around. Maybe it's not that you're weak. Maybe you're just surrounded by what drains you instead of what lifts you. Inner strength isn't just built inside you, it's also fed by what's around you. Surround yourself with voices that raise you up, with people who inspire you, with ideas that ignite you. Because no one can stand tall on ground that's pulling them under. Protect your environment, and you'll be protecting your strength. That way, nothing and no one will be able to bring you down again. 10th lesson, learn to be alone without feeling empty. They say that at the top of a mountain there's a door no one sees, a door that only opens when everything else has fallen apart. One day, a man reached that peak, exhausted, after losing everything. For years, he had built his life on things he thought were solid: recognition, promises, other people's approval. But one by one, those pillars had collapsed. What once held him up was gone. And as the wind stripped away the last remaining pieces of who he'd been, only one question remained. What's left when nothing's left? He sat on the cold ground, too tired to go on, and for the first time in a long while, he heard the silence. Not outside, but within. It was heavy, uncomfortable, but also clean. And in the middle of that stillness, a quiet voice, maybe his own, maybe something older, said, "Don't seek refuge in what the world can take away. Build within yourself something no one can ever destroy." That's when he understood. Life hadn't tried to ruin him. It had stripped him bare. It had brought him face to face with his essence, without titles, without certainties, without masks. He realized that true strength isn't found when everything is going well. It's found when the ground shakes, and you choose to stay standing anyway. That night, the man didn't come down the mountain wiser or stronger. He came down more conscious. He understood that pain wasn't his enemy. It was his initiation. That loss wasn't an end. It was the beginning of a different kind of power, the kind that comes from mastering yourself. Centuries earlier, Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "Each of us is given an inner fortress, the ability to endure what life throws at us, without letting it break our soul." And maybe that's the invisible door we all must open, not with words, but with patience, courage, and silence. The Stoics saw solitude as a chance to train. Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations alone, at night, in his military tent, while war raged outside. He didn't write them for others, he wrote them for himself. It was his way of returning to center, of bringing order to his mind while the world was in chaos. He once wrote, Nowhere can man find a quieter retreat than in his own soul. And that wasn't poetry. It was emotional survival. Now imagine something ordinary. You get home after a long day. The first thing you do is turn something on. The TV, the radio, your phone. Anything to make noise. Silence feels strange. It makes you uncomfortable. But if every time you're alone you need noise, you'll never truly hear yourself. Learning to be alone doesn't mean isolating from the world. It means learning to listen to yourself without filters, to face your thoughts without running from them. Solitude can be an uncomfortable mirror, but it's the only one that doesn't lie. It shows you what you really think, what you fear, what you want. And that's where true inner strength begins, when you can face yourself without masks and still stand tall. Because when you know how to be with yourself, no absence can ever destroy you. Let me suggest 3 simple practices. The first is what I call a date with yourself. Pick one day a week to go out alone. No headphones, no screens, no distractions. Maybe it's a coffee, a walk, or a quiet moment looking at the horizon. Not to plan tasks, but to check in with yourself. Ask, how am I? What do I need? What am I avoiding? That conversation, though it seems small, will bring you a sense of clarity you may not have felt in a while. The second practice is the ritual of conscious silence. 10 minutes before bed, turn everything off. Sit in stillness and just breathe. Don't try to empty your mind. Just watch your thoughts float by like clouds dissolving in the sky. At first, it will be hard, but over time, that space becomes a sanctuary, a place where the world's noise can't reach. And the third is more intimate. Write a letter to yourself from 1 year ago. Tell them what you've learned, the fears you've overcome, the things you no longer need. You'll see that even in your loneliest moments you were growing. It's a way of reminding yourself that your own company has been enough, even when you thought it wasn't. My friend, being alone is not the same as being empty. It means being with yourself. It means building an inner refuge so solid that even if the world falls apart, your center remains unshaken. That is true strength, the kind that comes from silence, from stillness, from peace with who you are. Now I want you to share something honestly with me. What has solitude taught you about yourself? Write it in the comments. Your words may be exactly what someone else needs to read today to find the strength to stand up again. 11th lesson, have the courage to move forward, even with fear. They say even Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the known world, felt fear. Not the fear of a soldier facing the enemy, but the quiet kind of fear that comes when you know what's right, and that doing it will be the hardest thing. On the frontiers of the Danube, surrounded by war, illness, and betrayal, he wrote in his meditations, "If doing what's right causes you pain, remember, that pain will pass, but the shame of not doing it will remain." That line reveals his most human truth. He didn't run from fear. He used it as a compass. Fear, for him, wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a clue, a signal pointing to exactly what he needed to face. Fear, my friend, is like a guard dog. It barks every time you approach an important door. Sometimes it scares you so much you turn around, even if you know that what you want is right on the other side. But the trick is learning its language. Fear doesn't mean don't enter, it means there's something important here. If you run, it chases. If you stop and walk toward it, it quiets down. Think of a simple, real-life situation. You're offered the chance to speak in public, lead a project, or tell someone a hard truth. Your mind starts spinning with worst-case scenarios. I'll look stupid. I'll mess up. No one will listen. But fear doesn't predict failure. It just protects your comfort zone. And when you take the step, when you say the first word or make the first move, the monster shrinks. It was always bigger in your head than it ever was in real life. Marcus Aurelius understood that courage isn't about eliminating fear. It's about acting in spite of it. That's why he believed human nature was built for action, not for paralysis. In his life, every battle was also a metaphor for the soul. Stay still, and fear grows. Move forward, and fear dissolves. That's the difference between someone who is broken by the external and someone who is forged from within. Picture this. You're standing in front of a door. On the other side is the opportunity you've been waiting for. A change, a project, a conversation that could transform something important. Just as you reach for the handle, fear barks. It doesn't scream you can't. It just says, be careful. That's your mind trying to protect you. Step forward anyway. Don't ask fear for permission. Invite it to come with you. When it sees you're moving without its approval, it will stay behind. Here's a practice that might sound simple, but it will change the way you face fear. The mandatory first step. When something scares you, commit only to the first step, not the whole journey. If you need to give a talk, just write the first sentence. If you want to work out, just put on your shoes. If you have to start a hard conversation, just open the message and write the greeting. The rest will follow. What matters is moving before your mind builds a wall. Then, keep a note on your phone or a small notebook where you write down every time you did something you were afraid of. Whether it was big or small doesn't matter. Rereading those pages on days when fear feels heavy will remind you that courage isn't something you're born with. It's something you collect. Each brave act becomes proof that you can do it again. And here's one of the most powerful mental shifts you can make. Replace the question, what if it goes wrong, with what if it goes right? That small change rewrites the whole story. Suddenly, fear stops being a prophecy of failure and becomes a door to possibility. It's incredible how just one phrase can change how you see the world. The Stoics understood that fear isn't an enemy to destroy. It's a messenger to interpret. They didn't deny it or romanticize it. They watched it, named it, and used it. Epictetus said, "No man is free if he fears pain, death, or loss." And he was right. Fear won't disappear, but you can teach it not to rule you. Remember, fear doesn't disappear. It just learns to respect those who keep walking. That may sound modern, but it carries the same Stoic spirit. It's not about being fearless, it's about being the kind of person fear looks at and steps aside. And that's where true inner strength is born. Not in the moments where everything feels easy, but in those where fear whispers, "You're not ready." Because every time you choose to move forward in spite of the shaking, you build an invisible wall inside you. A wall that doesn't protect you from fear. It protects you from abandoning your own dreams. And you know what's curious? None of this is really about learning new things. It's about unlearning how you've been taught to see the world. It's about stopping the reflex to react like someone fragile and starting to think like someone who doesn't break even when everything around them does. Because in the end, the difference between the one who falls and the one who rises again isn't luck. It's mindset. And right there, in that shift, comes the final lesson. The piece that makes everything else fall into place. Final lesson, be loyal to your word even when no one's watching. Picture this, it's the middle of the night. A young man puts his phone aside, closes his laptop, and stares at a crumpled sheet of paper on the table. It's the list of resolutions he wrote on the first day of the year. Start running, learn something new, be more consistent. He sighs. He didn't follow through on most of them. No one knows. No one's going to call him out. But he knows. That look he gives the paper. It's not guilt, it's weariness. The weariness that comes from making promises to yourself and breaking them. And right there, in that quiet moment, is where true inner strength is born. Not in grand gestures, but in the small promises you keep in silence. Tell me, are you that guy? Because if you are, there's something you need to remember. Epictetus said, "Don't promise yourself great things. Promise yourself to fulfill the small ones." It wasn't just a wise-sounding quote. It was a call to coherence. Because the Stoic doesn't need an audience. His judge lives within. Integrity isn't proven in public. It's built when you follow through on what you said, even when no one is watching. Think of it this way, your word is like a brick. Every time you do what you said you would, you lay another brick in the structure of your character. But every time you break a promise to yourself, You don't just remove a brick, you crack the whole wall. And those cracks, though invisible, eventually collapse your self-trust. The strange thing is, from the outside, everything might still look fine. No one sees the fracture, but you do. And living with the feeling that you can no longer trust your own word is a quiet kind of weakness. The solution isn't to demand perfection. It's to rebuild with consistency. Start with what I call the invisible contract. Choose one single promise to yourself each week. It could be waking up at the time you said you would, completing a workout, reading a few pages each night. Don't chase heroic goals. Chase reliability. If you keep it, you renew your confidence. If you don't punish yourself, but don't lie to yourself either. Reflect, adjust. Then apply what I call the word review before saying I'm going to. Pause for 2 seconds. Ask yourself, will I really do this? If the answer is no, don't say it. Honest silence is more powerful than empty promises. Speak less. Follow through more. That's the clearest path to strengthening your soul. Marcus Aurelius had a habit like this. Every night after battles or imperial duties, he'd write in his journal to review his day. He wasn't trying to praise himself or feel guilt. He just observed. His question was simple but piercing. Was I faithful today to the person I said I wanted to be? That practice, night after night, forged his character. He didn't need anyone else to hold him accountable. He looked himself in the eye with honesty. And that's what I want for you, my friend. To start looking at yourself like that. No filters, no excuses, no fear. If you do what you say you will, even when no one sees, you become solid. And that, trust me, is a kind of power nothing external can take away. Chris Williamson, host of Modern Wisdom, puts it in modern terms. True self-esteem is built by doing what you said you would. There is no more Stoic truth than that. Every act of coherence adds to your strength. And that strength doesn't depend on applause or validation or luck. It depends on you. Now picture that young man again, 1 year later. This time, his list is shorter and more honest. He no longer promises to change the world. He just promises to keep showing up for himself. He doesn't run every day, but he gets up when he said he would. He's not learning 1,000 things, but he's moving forward, and he's not quitting. And when he turns out the light, he feels something more valuable than any applause. Self-respect. That's the essence of everything we've talked about. Real strength isn't loud. It's not something you show off. It's built in silence, in the coherence of your actions. Because when you're loyal to your word, not even criticism or loss or failure can bring you down. The one who keeps their promises in the dark becomes unbreakable in the light. Being strong doesn't mean pretending that nothing affects you. It means building a mind so solid that, even if the world falls apart, you remain standing. It's about mastering your emotions, keeping your word, letting go of what weighs you down, and staying calm in the middle of chaos. There are no magic formulas, just the daily decision not to give up, to choose composure when everything pushes you to react, to stay firm even when no one is watching or applauding. If you've made it this far, write in the comments, "I am my own fortress." They say those who stay until the end always find their reward, and you just did. So I invite you to subscribe, like, and share this video with someone who might need it. Click now on the videos you see on screen, because the journey is just beginning.